Hey everyone, it's Jay. I work with Jason on community management. So today I'm going to share how I use Supabase for my front end when I build a project demo. And we want to cover several key components, how you build the data schema from 0 to 1. And I already shared one videos about how you turn your business logic to a table schema in the last video. I will post the link below so you can check. This video is more like implementation part for how you use Supabase. And today we're going to cover how we use MCP Supabase and prompt and also the JS SDK for connect the front end to back end. We just registered our X on the platform, so feel free to follow us and share some comments, feedback regarding AI Builder Club. And we would like to help you spread your idea and repost also AI trend. On YouTube, there's not a lot of people talk about how you can connect your Supabase to the front end. So today I'm going to share something I have built, so you can definitely follow my step and understand how Supabase worked and how to connect your front end, or some CRUD operations, which means like you can create, update, read, and delete those key actions. Either you manually change on the Supabase or you operate on the front end. For example, my project is like I log in as being admin or I log in as user. I can manage the consulting project. For example, I have consulting management and project management, but I will dive into detail later. So just basically want to show you how you can reflect front end and back end as Supabase. So for example, we have one consultant named Jackson. Let's edit his name to Jackson Wong. Then save consultant. The UI is changed, and we back to our Supabase. We found out the table called consultant. If we go back to the database, we found out it's Jason Wong is changed. But if we remove Jason Wong to home, so we refresh the UI page, then it should turn Jackson 1 to Jackson home, right? And what if I delete someone? For example, I delete Jackson home from my consultant management. It just disappeared on the UI, then back to the backend. Now the consultant record is deleted. And for the next step, if for example we have also project management, we only change the field of the status. For example, what we have on the backend project, then we have 3 status as finished. Yeah, this is finished. If we change the city planning to like see in progress, then it shows it's updated. Then we change the Reddit to waiting. Then we refresh the backend page. Then we found out the status should be changed. Yes, it's changed from finished to in progress and waiting. So that's basically what I'm going to show you today, how you can connect the UI to the backend and how you can create such tables with different policies, different functions, and no matter what you change on the UI that reflect on the backend, or you manually made a change on the backend that still apply to the UI. Make sure the two-way sync mapping. So here is my Supabase workflow quick intro. So basically there are 2 sections. Section 1. So if you know about database, you're pretty familiar what I'm talking about, because you need to clarify your business logic, your data and data type, and also set up your Supabase project configure and start using the AI coding assistant help you build database tables and design schema. But if you do not know those important concepts, you still can do vibe coding. Just ask step by step to help you to design the solid schema that you store your data. But I do have another video like post 2 weeks ago. You definitely can check that out. That covers a lot of important concepts you should be familiar in the database. So let's back to my project, see what I have here. Yes, so from this my current demo project, I have basically this is a key workflow. I have a user who can submit the project, or who can like make a change on the project settings. Also, the project is assigned to consultants, and or consultants can take project. So from user to project, we call that one-to-many relationship. From project to consultant, this relationship we call like many-to-many. I will cover that part in the Supabase part later. And then if we expand this concept a little bit, so we can think of, okay, so you as admin, you as manager, or you as the boss of the company, you think you have a different CRUD operations different from users. So for example, you can assign project to consultant. You update consultant profile status, or when consultant's leaving, you can delete or archive those records. But for the user, you only can submit, delete, edit the project you owned. You do have authorization to operate on the consultant section. This is my current UI. As you can see, we have login as admin, login as users. You have totally different page to manage different things like product management, consultant management. But if you are the user, so you select the one of user role, then you only can edit or delete the one you create or your own. Back to the AI coding assistant, I use WinSurf async. So if you use Cursor or VS Code, you're pretty familiar with this AI coding assistant UI. So the first step is always set the front end. So now I have built a fully functional front end. Yeah, after you set up a front end, you definitely should have a PRD overview, or you should have a PRD overview first, and it goes with front end and back end. Basically, you cover your business context. If you know the system architecture, you can put notes here. If you don't know, you can update later. Then you should put the key features you think is important, and I also cover the user flow. User flow is the key step when you build the CRUD operations. Different users have different roles. It's really important to be very clear on the user flow. You can iterate a lot of times, but be sure you have user flow that is matched with your front end. Then the next step is I have built self-used prompt. I call this MetaDB prompt. So basically, this prompt help you to turn your business idea to logic blueprint. There are 2 prompts, so probably over 200 lines. I will share in the community later. Basically, it has step-by-step things that help you enrich your idea, map the logic, and then you, based on your business logic, you create 3 files. So this three files basically means the PRD for backend or PRD for database design, help you break down logic and give you a meta outline. And the way back to the process, it looks like this. So the prompt, it means I analyze the UI, analyze the project overview, and help me run this prompt and step by step to clarify everything. Then you can see it runs overview and is analysis, and then I just ask to clarify first because this is step by step I want to highlight. For example, I want to add skills that might not mentioned in the original workflow, and I want to highlight the relationship between the project and consultant, something like that. Then it helped me generate 3 files. So in the 3 files, it look like this. In the case overview, it just like use the business language to illustrate the scope, the goal, the narrative, and the logic breakdown is very important here. It means like in each entity, what's the definition and what's the attribute it may consider, what's the variable properties. You can see we break down very clearly here, and what's the relationship in business world. What's the many-to-many or what's the one-to-many. For example, many-to-many means right here you can see many projects can be assigned to many consultants through project consultant table. So you will see we have a project consultant table as a junction table that builds between the project and consultant. It helps us to break down. And then we have a CRUD operation matrix, help us understand in each role-based access what they can do. So this CRUD be a good guideline for us to move on the next step. And then we want to highlight what's the user and consultants. I mentioned in the last session, if you do not have this logic breakdown or like data dictionary, For the definition for the role, for the actions, AI coding assistants do not understand what does user mean. For example, user can be paid user, free user, or visitors, or the frequent users. So you need to be very clarified about each entity and about what's their relationship, their key actions. So this will help us to build the foundation of the database design. Then we have the third, the final table overview. For example, like how many tables we have, what's the description of each table, what's the nodes, and for the meta field, in each table, what fields we have, what's their tab, because in the Supabase, you need to identify those things when you create columns, create tables. This is good reference guidebook for the next step. After you have this, you can go directly to the Supabase building. After we clarify from step 0 to step 3, then we need to think of how do we build it up on Supabase from step 4 to step 7. But in this video, we will put our attention on step 5, 6, 7, not on step 4, because this is for demo purpose only. I have not dived into the auth, role, and role level security, but there's a lot of good videos from Supabase offshore YouTube. You definitely can check out it. And this is very important when you have the production level or when you have like multi-tenant, multi-user stage, if your product needs this. So let's go back to my project. So after we define the CRUD, then we think of how do we turn it to a database, how do we implement this in database. I draw this, help me to clarify what I'm going to build. For the logic, we need to first thing always create table and schema. After we clarify those things, we will use Supabase MCP to directly implement. And then when we have like two rows, two login rows like admin and user, we may consider like functions, auth, role, RLS policy. If you also want to track how your role level record is changed, you probably need audit logs. I will cover what is trigger, basically, which is just automation to make actions like for record on the audit logs. And also there are some section called enumerated tabs. It's like when you have projects, your project has status, right? Like waiting finish, assign archive. Your consultant has status like available and not available. Those enumerated tabs is like global tag system, help you manage the status, and you can see the drop down menu on the Supabase UI instead of the simple text. I'll show example here. Let's back to the Supabase UI. Now after you create a project and after you create a table, you can click to database. Then you can see all the features I mentioned. For example, you have the schema visualizer. It basically means how your table is be connected, what field you have at each table, and you can have a meta overview, and you can use auto layout. But I don't like this visualization because the line is always crossed and always be overlapped. I highly recommend you do the ERD, entity relation diagram, using other ERD editor. And for tables, it just means all tables you have and what columns you can view. And then so for functions, it's basically mean what the CRUD functions you created, or what's the multiple steps that you created. So for example, we have the get all users, means we select all users information we need. And we have other like trigger functions. For example, we want to insert the audit log record when something happened. So that's why it's named like trigger. It also uses the function to execute. Then we can define our own new functions. It just depends on your step and how you think of your user workflow, and just chat with your AI coding assistant to create functions here. And for triggers, so you just set event. For example, in the consultant table, if the record update, record is delayed, record is insert, then it make a trigger. It's made this function happen. It just record the log in my audit log table. So back to the audit table editor, you see the audit logs. Here's all the record that just triggered. So you see the consultant table and the project table that's made a lot of actions. And enumerated tabs, as I said, if you have project, you have the status, then you set up like a list of status you probably won't change, and you can go back to table editor, find out the project, and you see the status, then it's turned to drop down, so you can easily change. But if you do not have this enumerated tab, for example, I have my consultant table, which shows availability status. It's now the drop down. But if you want to see what values it includes, it shows an array. So means in this field, it only can take available, busy, and unavailable. But if I put others, for example, I put like not busy, it won't take. You see this check constraints, string take unavailable, then it worked, right? Refresh page, you see this is unavailable. So in the demo, we just set the text as array, so we can easily change. But after you finalize this, you can just turn its field to the enumerated tab and saved in the database section here. Then for extension, we will skip because this is more like you have more advanced case or you want to use some external package. And indexes, it helps you improve your performance query, like when you have a large data set, you want to set index to retrieve the data faster than just scanning the whole tables. And the rows policy we will cover later. For the migration, we need to highlight because in the Supabase MCP, it shows the migrations. Migration just it's like audit logs, but it's not tracking the row level change. It tracks the schema change or like table change. For example, it's remove table, or it's fix something. It's all the schema change. It will track everything in the migration set. For example, when I create tables, it just show here, but there's no any row level thing. You can see the SQL we just run before. Yeah, that's pretty much how you can set up database section and how it can be applied and related to each other. So before we get started, let's introduce several key components, and you will definitely see every time when you build your database. First, Auth. Auth means who you are, because that's how Supabase know who is making the request. Like once a user log in, they get a JWT token from the front end, and that token including your identity, auth.uid, and it's passed with every request. If you do not have token, you just treat it as public. You are not logging. So as public, you do not have a role, and your role level security is just pretty restricted. The second part is the role, like what kind of user you are, and your token also include a role. You can customize or self-defined, but usually it's like admin and authenticated or something. Supabase use this role to decide like which permissions to apply. So the same table might have behaved differently for different roles. And the third element is the row level security, like which row of the tables you can access. You can write policy that check things like, so one user might see one row and another sees nothing, or the admin can see all rows. Same table, different rules. Those policies live at the table level, so means like each table can have multiple policies for different roles and actions. So you should treat it as the gate that help you manage all the data flows, and you definitely should clarify to finalize your row level security policies. Then for functions, instead of using the direct CRUD, the client library it provides, functions are great for like enforcing the process, hiding the structure, and working with complex workflows. So let's go back to the official docs and understand the main difference between the CRUD client library, for example, the fetch, insert, update, upsert, delete, and the difference between the Postgre functions. That when you make operations, there are two different ways, but they can do the exactly same thing. So basically, if your logic is simple, like just reading or writing from a table, you can use Supabase JS client library, for example, the code here. So you just from one table is called character, and the action you do is select. They talk straight to the tables. It's fast, easy to test, and great for prototyping. Works well if your RLS policy are set up correctly. It also keeps the developer experience fast if you can debug quickly without writing any like SQL query. It's very super transparent. But if you want more control, like something like we did in our Supabase, for example, like touching the multiple tables in one single call instead of like when you're trying to make several actions, you use direct CRUD operation, you may call 3 times, but when you want to have multiple step workflow or heading your like table structure, that's where those Postgre functions come in. So through Postgre functions, which you can call using the Supabase RPC with the function name instead of the table name and the action name. And you put all the logic inside the database. For example, here you create table, insert into what tables and what values. Then you just create the SQL query instead of coding using CRUD. So functions are pretty helpful when the logics are not likely to change, like for password reset and updates. You just encapsulate all the logic together.
Back to the Supabase UI, and you can see here's one authentication. I already added a new user, and if you click this user, you saw the draw JSON. You will see it have the role is authenticated. So it means if you have multiple users who just log in, and you will use this authentication to verify their role from the metadata it gives to you, and you have the email and ID as unique ID to help you understand what's the role security level you're gonna set. And then the next step is the policy. Policy is role level security. As you said, I have all tables here. So at each table, you can set all different role levels security. For example, when you click, you can build something like at which table, at what behavior, then it has some template here. And then after you set up them, so I will enable all of them to make sure like my data flow follow these rules to avoid situation like a user can delete my project or a user can delete other project, even or consultants can delete other consultants project. So that's nonsense. So that's why we need this RLS. But for demo purpose, they are all public role. I don't have set up the auth, so there's no role. If after I set up auth and the role, I'll definitely enable all of them. So after we're familiar with all the concept in Supabase, and now we can dive into the implementation part with some prompt and some strategy as set up. Before we're creating a Supabase folder, we only have the front end, the business instruct, and the ERD file, right? And now we just clarify the business context. We have not created the table yet. We just have the table in the MD file, but we're not created in the Supabase. I just simply use prompt and something that I have curated here. For example, I have one is called development guide. It just basically help me to understand how complex my project and which strategy I should use. For example, there are two strategies. It's called one go approach for the rapid prototyping. Like we skip all the row level security and we use the RPC functions to show some use case, or if you go to like production ready or after use the one go strategy, I prefer the hybrid approach. It's more like longer initial setup but scale for long term. So you want to turn your project to a production level ready, and there are migration checklist and also some common issues I met before. So I have this file, then I just set the env, and then I have this Supabase instruction. This file just have me clarify the component based overview of Supabase we just introduced before. Then, having this file as the guide, proceed to next step of creating schema and tables build using JS SDK Supabase MCP to implement build. After you set up Supabase MCP, there are only two tools you will frequently use. It's apply migration. It helps us build the schema to do the data migration or the execute cycle. It means that, for example, when we generate some sample data for testing, we will use this. Then you can see a list of two calling is the both. Apply migration, we create the consultant CRUD functions or project CRUD functions or insert skills, right? But for the cycle, you can see it's used to view our projects. And then a created config. Config, this is a new file important to help us to connect to the front end. So for example, we use the RPC functions. So you can get these functions in our Supabase, and then you mapping this to get all project in the front end means you can read the project. And for the create project on the UI, we call these functions. And on the UI, it shows name, description, complexity, and the face. And then we made update project. We include these variables as default. Then we call these functions to run on the Supabase. So basically, it's just like for one UI features, then a mapping with the one backend functions. It just connect all of them together. After that, it just goes to my front UI to run some updates and fix things. Continue. We have the test connection here to ensure it working. After testing, you can just go to the front end to test or the back end to test, just as I showed in the beginning of the video. After that, I usually ask what's the step-by-step, what's the error mistakes, then it can help me finalize and always update it back to the files. Ensure the next time if I have a similar project or the two-way mapping, I always can refer to the doc. It's updated and it has issue listing. And then I found out that the audit log is not working. Then I made a follow-up question to fix the audit log and testing. Then the audit logs, the triggers works. Yeah, that's basically how I use MCP and RPC functions and Supabase JS SDK to mapping them together to use the Supabase for my front end. Final result is pretty straightforward. When you change and make any change on the front end, reflect on back end. So I'll take one example here, help you guys understand and what is many-to-many relationship. So on project consultant case, it's the one project can be assigned to many consultant, and one consultant can take many projects. So if we back to this table has consultant ID and project ID, and they are in the same row, it means they are connected. So for example, in this project is B7, and if B7 is city planning, has the two B7 and two consultant. The first consultant is me, and second consultant is Alice. So if we assign a new consultant for city planning on the front UI, then for example we assign Amy as well, then we back to database, you see the city planning, added the Alice. Or if we try to manually add the relationship at this project consultant table, this assigned status or this assigned row should be changed. So let's try to create one. When we insert row, we random ID, then we select the project, select this one, assign to me. Okay, yes, after we created, you found out here is the project and is assigned. But for the row, we can just copy paste consultants. and put here. And then we're back to the UI. It should be reflected with login as being. Yes, you see this project has been assigned with my name. Then if you want to add one more person, you cannot add to the same row. You need to create another new row. It's the many-to-many relationship. That's how it works. Even we go back to the user version, we still can view the project was assigned to me. So it means we have created the full dashboard with the CRUD operations front end with the Supabase. So thank you guys for today's tutorial. Any questions, and please leave a comment below. I'll definitely reply, and I will post some prompts and just check it out.